All right, welcome everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely, always ready to break down some NBA action.
Well, today we're looking at some pretty interesting results from some recent matchups, really showcasing the variety in the league right now.
Yeah, definitely some unexpected outcomes, some blowouts, some real tail biters.
Exactly. So we've got 5 games on the docket today. We'll be talking about the Bucks taking on the Lakers, the Bulls facing the Kings, Warriors against the Raptor, Hornets versus Knicks, and then finally the Pacers up against the Bets.
A good mix of teams from both conferences, some contenders, some teams trying to find their footing.
Right, and that's what we're here to dissect, not just, who won and lost, but like how did they get there? What were the key factors, the strategies, the standout performances that really shaped these games? We want to get past the box score and the real nitty-gritty.
Yeah, dive into the X's and O's, see what we can glean about these teams, their strengths, their weaknesses, and maybe even some hints about what we can expect moving forward.
All right, so let's tip things off with that Bucks-Lakers game. I mean, 118-89, that's a pretty dominant win for the Bucks. What was your first takeaway when you saw that final score?
Oh, it was definitely a statement win for Milwaukee, no doubt. The first thing that jumped out at me was the Bucks defense. I mean, they were just suffocating.
Suffocating, yeah, that's a good word for it.
It wasn't just that the Lakers couldn't score, which obviously they struggled to, but it was the way the Bucks just shut them down. Like every offensive set the Lakers tried, the Bucks had an answer for. Forcing turnovers, contesting shots, just relentless pressure.
Yeah, and you could see the Lakers getting frustrated. Their offense just never really got into any kind of rhythm. But it wasn't just defense for the Bucks, right? I mean, they were firing on all cylinders offensively as well.
Absolutely. I mean, their ball movement was crisp. They were finding the open man, knocking down threes. And when you pair that kind of offensive efficiency with their stifling defense, well, you've got a recipe for a dominant win.
Yeah, definitely a tough combination to beat. And speaking of tough to beat, you got to talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo. Another double-double, just dominating the game.
He's a force of nature. His versatility is just incredible. Scoring, rebounding, facilitating, playing lockdown defense. He just impacts the game in so many ways.
Yeah, it's like he's everywhere on the court. And he had a good supporting cast, too. Chris Middleton, Jrue Holiday, they were all contributing.
For sure. When those three are clicking, the Bucks are just a different beast. A real three-headed monster for opposing teams to deal with.
Yeah, no kidding. On the other side, the Lakers, well, it sounds like they had a rough night. The report mentioned some key players out with injuries. How much do you think that affected them?
Well, injuries are never ideal, right? It disrupts rotations, puts more pressure on other players to step up. But I don't think it was just the absences. Even with a full squad, I think they would have struggled against that Bucks defense.
It really seemed like the Lakers just couldn't find an answer for the Bucks' intensity.
Exactly. They couldn't get into their offensive flow, couldn't generate good looks. It was a tough night for them, for sure.
All right, well, let's move on to a game with a very different feel, the Chicago Bulls versus the Sacramento Kings. This one ended 128 to 116, a much higher scoring affair. What stood out to you in this matchup?
Oh, this was a shootout. A real offensive showcase. The Bulls, they just came out firing, pushing the pace, hitting shots from everywhere.
Yeah, the report used the phrase fast-paced play and sharpshooting, which pretty much sums it up.
Exactly. They were running in transition, executing in the half court. They were just clicking on offense.
And leading the charge, that dynamic duo of Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, they combined for over 60 points.
Those two are just so good at putting the ball in the basket. They can score at all three levels, create their own shot, finish through contact. It's an nightmare for defenses to deal with.
Yeah, and the report mentioned the Bulls' effective use of pick and rolls. That's always a tough play to defend, and it seems like the Bulls have executing it really well, creating all sorts of problems for the Kings.
Oh, absolutely. The pick and roll, it's such a versatile play. And when it's run effectively, it can really open up the offense. You can get open shots for the ball handler, for the roller, for shooters spotting up on the perimeter. It's a key weapon for a lot of teams.
And it's interesting because even though it was a high-scoring game, the Bulls still managed to play pretty good defense. They were able to contain the Kings' key players, De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, to some extent.
Yeah, that was key for them. You can't win in the NBA just by outscoring everyone. You got to be able to get stops, especially against a team like the Kings who can put up points in a hurry.
Right, and Fox and Sabonis, they still had solid games, but it wasn't enough to keep up with the Bulls' offensive firepower.
Right. They just couldn't match the Bulls' pace and precision. The Bulls were just too much for them on this night.
All right, so let's move on to a game that was, well, a little bit closer. The Warriors versus the Raptors. This one ended 117 to 114, a real nail-biter. The report called it a nail-biting contest full of spectacular plays and clutch moments. Sounds like a game you didn't want to miss.
Oh, this was a good one. The kind of game that reminds you why we love the NBA. Back and forth, big shots, high stakes.
Yeah, and no surprise, Steph Curry was right in the middle of it. The report highlighted his clutch shooting and playmaking as being key to the Warriors' win.
He's just so good in those pressure-packed moments. Ice water in his veins. He can hit the big shot, make the right pass, just take over the game.
And the Raptors didn't make it easy for them. Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet, they both had great games, really pushed the Warriors to the limit.
Yeah, they played well. Siakam, he's become a real offensive threat. He could score inside, outside, create his own shot. And VanVleet, he's a tough defender, a reliable scorer, a leader on the court.
So what was it that ultimately gave the Warriors the edge in those final minutes? The report pointed to their experience and composure in critical moments.
Yeah, experience matters in those situations. The Warriors, they've been there, done that. They know how to handle the pressure, how to execute down the stretch, and they made the plays they needed to make, got the stops they needed to get.
They made some key defensive plays, hit some big threes. It was a classic Warriors performance in a close game.
Absolutely. They showed their championship medal.
All right, let's shift gears to the Hornets versus the Knicks. Charlotte wins this one, 115-98. The report described this as a showcase of teamwork and strategic execution for the Hornets. Sounds like a well-rounded performance.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't about one player carrying the load. It was a real team effort. Everyone contributed.
The report specifically highlighted LaMelo Ball's orchestration of the offense, his passing, his scoring. He was really running the show.
He's such a talented young player. He sees the floor so well, makes those pinpoint passes, gets his teammates involved. When he's on his game, the Hornets offense could be really tough to stop.
And it wasn't just Ball. The Hornets had multiple players scoring in double figures. That kind of balanced attack makes it so much harder for the defense.
Definitely. When you have scoring threats all over the court, the defense can't just focus on one or two guys. It stretches them out, creates more opportunities for everyone.
And defensively, the Hornets were disruptive, forcing the Knicks into tough shots and turnovers. A solid performance on both ends of the court.
Yeah, they played well. They took the Knicks out of their rhythm, controlled the pace of the game. It was a convincing win.
The report did mention a strong performance from Julius Randle for the Knicks, but it wasn't enough to overcome the Hornets' team effort.
Sometimes individual brilliance isn't enough. It takes a collective effort to win games in the NBA, and the Hornets, they showed that in this game.
All right, last but not least, the Pacers versus the Nets. The Pacers come out on top in this one, 105-99. A hard-fought battle characterized by strong defense and balanced scoring, according to the report.
Yeah, this was a gritty win for Indiana. They really had to grind it out.
The report highlighted Tyrese Haliburton as the key player for the Pacers. Not just his scoring, but his defensive tenacity as well.
Yeah, he was all over the court, making plays on both ends. He's really developing into a special player.
And perhaps the most impressive thing, the Pacers were able to limit the impact of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, the Nets' superstar duo. That's no easy feat.
No, it's not. Those two are some of the most gifted scorers in the league. To hold them in check, you need a disciplined defensive effort, and the Pacers brought it.
And on offense, the Pacers were moving the ball well, creating open shots. That's always a good sign.
Definitely. Good ball movement, good spacing. It leads to good looks. It shows they were playing together, executing their offense.
And the Nets, despite their star power, they just couldn't seem to find any consistency. It goes to show you need more than just talent to win in this league.
Exactly. You need teamwork, you need execution, you need to be able to play together as a unit.
So looking back at these 5 games, are there any overarching themes that stand out to you?
Well, one thing that jumps out is the importance of defense. We saw with the Bucks, the Bulls, the Pacers. You got to be able to get stops if you want to win games.
Right, and we also saw some great examples of offensive efficiency, the Bulls with their fast pace, the Bucks and Pacers with their ball movement. It's not just about scoring a lot of points, it's about scoring them efficiently.
Exactly. And then, of course, you can't forget about star power. Giannis, LaVine, and DeRozan, Curry, Haliburton, they all had a big impact on their respective games.
But even with those stars, we saw how important it is to have a good supporting cast, guys who can step up and make plays. Like with the Hornets, it was a real team effort.
Yeah, it's a team game. You need contributions from everyone if you want to be successful.
And finally, I think we saw the importance of composure, especially in those close games. The Warriors, they've been there before. They know how to handle the pressure. That experience can be invaluable.
Absolutely. When the game's on the line, you need players who can stay calm, make the right decisions.
So a lot of great takeaways from these games, a lot to think about as we move forward in the season.
Definitely. It's going to be exciting to see how these teams continue to develop, how the playoff picture takes shape.
Absolutely. So for all you listeners out there, I'll leave you with this thought. After seeing these results, what storylines are you most interested in following? What questions do you have about these teams and the league as a whole?
These games give us a glimpse into what's possible, but the beauty of the NBA is that it's always evolving. New challenges will arrive, new stars will emerge, and the narrative will continue to unfold. It's going to be a fun ride.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Always a pleasure. Until next time, keep watching those games, keep analyzing those plays, and we'll see you back here soon.
See you next time.